You might be already overflowing with information after what has been stated by guys here, but bear with us for a few more moments because I'm about to tell you about our hypothesis for monetary algorithm that we call FATH, and try to explain how we actually came here and why do you think applying FATH is a proper way of creating, a tokenized economy of a network. And before I delve into explaining, the principles of FATH itself, I wanted to talk about a broader macroeconomic perspective. And precisely, I wanted to talk about the way value creation inside the system and monetary supply affect one another. So FATH is based on the hypothesis that monetary supply and value creation inside a network, or a monetary network, shall we call that, are very entangled and have far-reaching consequences if they are unbalanced or unmatched. And this hypothesis takes its roots in historical research that we have conducted ourselves. Basically, it's as follows. So it is well known that if monetary supply supersedes the value creation inside the system, it leads to a form of inflation in terms of devaluation of the currency. And on the other hand, if real money value creation supersedes the monetary supply, supplying it for its economic growth, then the system falls into deflation, which is a very serious, might have very serious consequences for any economic system, as deflation leads to minimization of expenses run by everyone in the system. So FATH tries to balance those two processes against one another. I would probably not begin with describing the FATH, but rather then try and tell you about how it's run in traditional financial systems and how it's done in decentralized financial systems. So here we can see it's very broad and very inaccurate, but still, like the fiat credit cycle system that most of the countries on this planet are living in. So we have an emitting entity in the form of either decentralized financial networks as the Fed, or we have some centralized organizations that are issuing the monetary supply to the whole system. And well, as you might very well know, after the dissolution of Bretton Woods system, we've been kind of going through two processes. Mostly is where we, decimalization, where our currencies are counted by the 10th and dozens. And the second process I would call turning our money into trash, but by basically printing more money than the value created inside the system. And in a classical fiat credit cycle system, you have like an emitting entity passing the debt and emission in the form of loans down the system. So you have like several layers of various institutions selling loan to one another, and basically it creates such a pyramid where there's like those who are cornered and are not able to resell debt any lower than each other, and they're actually like paying the interests up. So basically the meeting entity here wins because it it returns more money than it has emitted. And like people and enterprises at the very bottom of that pyramid are constantly cornered because, yeah, well, basically they're not only not getting all the emission that happens in the system, but also they're like cornered to pay for it to happen. And it's a crazy thing that we're living in. But it has some logic behind it, as governing entities at the time were trying to create an artificially inflation system so that economy wouldn't stop because people would stop spending money. Deflation was one of the biggest background factors of various crises and the Great Depression, for example. So it's pretty simple. Emitting entities just basically grabbing all the interest for itself, and the issued money is not delivered to every single agent in the system. No way. It's given in the form of loans. Now, if we move to proof of work systems, for example, I wouldn't say it's the same thing happening, because it's not like reselling debt in the form of loans, but still, any emission that's happening basically is giving out to mining pools and like validators only. So the ordinary protocol users and like wallet holders are still getting devalued because like they don't receive the monetary supply that was printed, and like miners choose either to keep it for themselves for like some long-term goals, or they just apply selling pressure to the market. It's just their call, because they can either save for themselves or just sell it right away. And so devaluation of assets still occurs, but it gets worse in proof of stake systems. So in proof of stake systems, for example, the mining inflation is kind of taken out of the air. Inflation rates are sometimes tremendously high because proof of stake systems love to reward their miners with additional minted currency, and it happens all over again. Something emits additional supply, and ordinary users, they just don't get it. They don't get a part of it. So validators just take all of it for themselves, or if you stake it, or just in depot system, if you can delegate it to somebody else, you're also participating, but still you're not getting all of the emission, and those who haven't delegated, they don't get anything at all. So emission is still concentrated in some like validator powers, and as we know, most of the systems are like plutocratic oligopolies, where like a few validators control everything that's happening inside. So it's just a bunch of people getting money from protocol and selling them for their own purpose, and devaluing all other account holders in the system. And basically, what is the difference of FATH in this regard, and how it's going to make things different from where we're living now? And yeah, basically, FATH has two major principles. So the first one is that the amount of emission is not just taken out of the air, or it's a predefined emission which actually leads to limited supply perspective and deflationary system. But the thing is that the amount of emission in FATH is defined by the protocol that calculates the difference between real value creation in the second period and the first one, and the difference between them. We can call it something like GNetP. We call it like gross network product, or you can call it like GDP of the network. That's your call. So basically what is happening is that we're calculating all the services and goods sold through the network throughout some period of time. And we, just like a GDP, we compare one period to another one. And for example, if in the second period of real value creation, we have like more value created by some percentage, then what we do is FATH monetary algorithm basically prints the percentages on top of the monetary supply. So this way we're actually like targeting the monetary supply growth to the economic growth of the system, and not just printing money out of thin air or having like a stable limited supply. And because we are like have a following supply to the economic growth, we're balancing out deflation that occurs when limited supply is standing still and economic growth is just skyrocketing. And also we're mitigating devaluation of assets, because basically we are not printing more money that we require due to our economic growth. So that's like the first principle. And the second principle is pretty easy. Basically, all money that is printed out by FATH monetary algorithm is divided among every single agent in the system or an account holder, and it's done in a proportional way. So it's like if there's like a 3% issuance done, because of FATH, then you would get a 3% issuance on top of the coins that you're holding in your wallet. And this way, you're basically giving emission to every single agent in the system, which is rather, it's a just thing to do, because you're basically not devaluing them through various mechanisms, as it's done in traditional credit fiat systems and proof work and proof stake systems as well. With this instrument, basically, FATH will be able to fight both deflation and devaluation of assets, and we hope to see that basically HMND token, which will be built on the FATH algorithm, would be like the first token that is not devaluing its participants due to some malfunctions in the design of the token itself. So it would be delivering the issuance of emission to every actor in the system based on economic growth. So yeah, it would be quite different from what we're using today. And another thing is that FATH is not just an emission mechanism, it's a rebalancing mechanism. So there's like an in-FATH, we call it, when we have like helicopter money on top of what we already own because of the economic growth. But if for some reason the economic growth in the second period is less than the economic growth in the first one, then we have an out-FATH. It's a proportional burn of assets from all the wallets in the system. So it is done for the same purpose, to kind of stop the monetary supply deviation from economic growth. And for some reason, we have a slow economic growth, we shrink the monetary supply to balance the things out. Yep, that's basically how FATH works. Thank you very much. I hope that I brought you some light and shed you some light on the things that we're doing here. So I give this seat to whoever is up next.